When we think, we're able to put ideas into words, but what would be like if you actually drew what you saw, experienced, or thought? On today's show, we're going to be speaking to someone who does exactly that. Welcome to the Secret Men's Business Podcast. This is Joey Buzzertle. On today's show, we're going to be speaking to another podcaster who actually draws what he hears. And the interesting part is his drawings are amazing, and he's going to be sharing his experiences with us. Let's welcome to the show, Matty Mitchell. Matty, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm really, really excited and rapt that Instagram enables people now to connect, because I was saying to you before the show that I don't know how I came across your profile, but I'm really in love with what you do. So do you want to explain to the audience a little bit of what your drawings and how you interpret stories came about?
So I have a podcast called Drawn to Your Story, and basically where it came about is I love to draw and I love to talk, and I was like, why not combine those? But also I needed a place to stand out from the crowd and do something that's a bit bigger or a bit different than what I do on a day-to-day basis. So I was like, why not use all these ideas combined into one? I love podcasts, and then after thinking about this for years and years and years, I finally was able to get time to do it myself. And it's been going for I'm on my 10th episode coming up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're still it's a new thing for you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
how are you
really new.
enjoying it? How are you enjoying the process of having people come in? And again, I really want to get into your process of how you take that information and then draw this amazing sort of image of it. So how do you
Yeah.
get into that? How do you drop into it?
So first of all, I would always someone, like if I hear a story or something like that on a podcast, especially there's this podcast called The Nine Club. Well, it was on YouTube, so more of a vodcast, but it's a skateboarding podcast. So I would listen to that while I was working at Nintendo, and I'd just have that in the headphones. And then while I was waiting for a meeting or something to load, I'll just sketch a picture, and I'd be like, oh, this would be a really fun picture. So I sketched it to them, and they would use the picture and show it on the Instagram. And then I was like, oh, okay, like there's something really fun about drawing other people's sort of stories. And that sort of stuck with me for a long time. And then what would happen is I'd hear a story on Facebook or Instagram from friends of mine, because I lived in Seattle and a lot of my friends lived in Western Australia or around Australia. Then I'd be like, oh, I'm going to interpret this story or what they're going through their lives, and just do a drawing for them. And I found that I really enjoyed that process.
Hmm.
For example, one of my friends had, his name's Storm, and he had testicular cancer, and he does a big thing called for Movember. And when I found that was happening, I was like, oh man, I got to do a drawing for him. So I did this drawing of have you heard this Storm in a teacup?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did these 3 teacups sort of stacked on each other, and he's a big surfer, where he loves surfing, and I did him getting a barrel in the tea on there with his family as 3 little galahs. It was 3 at the time. They've just added a 4th, but with that sitting on there, so that's how sort of the process of working these ideas into drawing sort of started from.
Does it come from? Do you think it's just an organic thing and you just go, bang, it just happens, or is it a thought process for you?
Oh, so it can happen both ways. For me, they say there's someone in the art world. I think there's a saying of some people that can see it and some people that find it. I'm definitely a finder. I wish I was a just see it and do it. But a lot of times, especially with the podcast that I'm doing now, when I'm editing the podcast, I'll have a blank bit of paper there and I'll sketch out ideas. And usually, the first couple of ideas, I don't really do because they're sort of too much right on the nose.
Mm.
But then sometimes the ones right on the nose are the best ones. But I'll sketch through a whole bunch, and I'll have 5 sheets of just all these little scribbles all over it. And then I'll find one, I'll grab it, and then I'll expand it out and see if I can make something more of it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I've never seen anything like it. So
cool.
it seems to me that in a world of everything, right? You don't expect to be surprised.
Yeah. Oh,
And
cool.
I really was. I think I spent like hours looking at your work because
Thank you.
well, if I connect with something, I just really enjoy it, and I just like the fact that it's not something I've seen before. Like you hear about, for example, artists painting a face, or like that Arn's brush.
Ando.
He's chatting to someone and painting, but this is like something that's not been done in a podcast sense anyway. You're talking, but yet you're scribbling and you're getting ideas. And that I think is good. So because this is a mental health podcast, I'm just curious to know, what do you feel when you're, is there a feeling that you connect with? So, for example, if you were doing something with me, would you be looking for emotions? Like, say, if someone's sad that you're interviewing, or, how do you decide for what you want to put onto paper?
It's really tough. It's like podcast to podcast. And so, for example, there was a lady called Kelly Canby, and she's a really funny, interesting person. She's an author illustrator over here in Western Australia. And she also runs Squibby West. But she has done stuff like, she was a designer, she was a florist. But she recently won, I think 2 years ago, she won a prize here, the Premier's Award. And she bought herself a motorbike with it, but a little like Vespa.
Right.
And she calls it Angelina. Because she's like, oh, it will steal your man. Like, it's sexy. It's like, so she's like, I was like, oh, cool. Like, I can play that into it. So I end up doing this like motorbike jumping, and out of her bag is just falling like books and flowers. And she loves the game spoons and like all that sort of stuff. So I grab like one main idea, and then I sometimes sprinkle that idea. But when it comes to the guy I was talking about before, Storm, I interviewed him. It's actually live now, but I interviewed him, and he has been through like he's had this wonderful life, but he's been through 3 really major tragedies. He was in a car accident when he was 20 that was really devastating. He lost his brother when he was 32, and his brother was 24, I think. And he
had cancer.
Had testicular cancer. And so it was one of the things I found. He's also got a little bit of a sense of humor about it. And with my drawings, I was a bit nervous about trying to find what to draw on that. But I ended up doing, even though I've done an illustration for him before, I ended up doing 2 drawings. One, which is a really humorous one of this testicles hanging outside of a short shorts. And it's saying, he's got this group for the Movember called the Lumpy Plums. And they are all about promoting like, hey, get them checked. And so they have the Lumpy Plums, and their slogan is check them. Mm-hmm. So this testicle's got a moustache, and then he's got a sign holding up saying like, check them. So it's like, I had a humorous one with that, but also then I was like, I want to do something that has that emotional feel. So I then drew a picture of his brother sitting on a bench, which was named after him at a local skate park where they live, to memorialize him, and then having his oldest daughter sitting on that bench with him, because they would go down there and they would sit on the bench and talk about the brother, her uncle, and tell her stories like that. So I was like, oh, that's such a little like magical moment. And not that they got to have that moment because the daughter wasn't alive when the brother passed, but maybe this can be hanging up in their house, and they'll be like, oh, that's that magic that happens on that chair. Yeah. So those 2 different sort of stories can sort of convey different emotions.
Yeah, and it's interesting how, we know that words aren't the only thing for communication. A picture can tell 1,000 words, and you could, the interesting thing is, what I like is your interpretation. So everyone looks at it and can see different things, which again, it's just a refreshing way to heal. Or, to be honest with you, when I started doing the research and looking at your work, I really see a cartoon TV series.
Thank you. I love that.
I see it moving. I see.
Excellent.
Have you thought of that? Have you thought of expanding,
yes.
and doing something like that?
Yeah, so I've got this children's book series that I self-published called The Adventurous Adventures of the Missing Sock. And when I self-published that, I literally thought, I'm going to put this out there and every person's going to want this. Not
Yeah.
one person's going to want to miss it, and it's going to turn into a TV show. I've self-published 2, but I've got 3 in my mind and half written out this next in the series. And I was like, oh, why wouldn't Netflix be picking this up? Like,
Yeah.
so I definitely have thought about it.
I like that. I like your energy about manifestation and the other thing I was going to say is it's interesting. I interviewed a guy the other week from WA who also won the Premier's Award.
Oh yeah, Holden Shepherd.
Yeah,
That might be the
Holden.
connection, because I seen
Right.
that and I thought you were a WA guy, and I was like, oh sweet, I want to support a WA podcaster.
Yeah.
And let's hit that up. But I'm glad we connected.
Yeah, so like, you know, so WA must have this really strong talent for the arts. Like, so
They have, especially where, I don't know where about he is based, but
Is it
in
Geraldton?
Fremantle. Oh, he's in Geraldton. That's right.
Yeah.
But in Fremantle, where we are, or where I am, there's a children's book place called Paperbird Books. There's the Fremantle Arts Centre. There's art galleries all around, and there's definitely a sense of community about that stuff.
That's
it's
good.
really supportive.
Yeah, and has that sort of maintained itself through the COVID? Do you feel like, because I know I'm in Melbourne, so you can imagine.
Yeah, I feel like it's a different story over here. Life doesn't feel any different over here, other than we can't travel anywhere. We had that 2 months, and we're all kind of like, everybody bought every bit of gym equipment, everybody bought anything they could do to stay inside, and then they were sort of relaxed, did the stages, and then we were like, oh, yeah,
Life's
it's
back.
pretty much normal. Like, I got a couple of mates that own bars, and they're like half capacity, and they're like, oh, we can't let any more people in, but they're like, their shows are selling out and stuff, and they're like, yeah, it's still good. We're not making as much money, but we're selling it out. And
yeah, that's good. You're lucky.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your imagination and your manifestation. So how have you been able to, I love that, how have you been able to maintain that in your life? Because I know that you're a father and you draw and you have another job, or is this what?
So I'm in a lucky enough position that my wife is the breadwinner.
Okay.
And we moved from Seattle, because I lived over there for 12 years. My wife's American. My kids were born there. And we sold a house, and we're like, sort of, what can we do with this time? We've got 40 years left on this world. And my wife really loves Fremantle. She lived here for a little bit. She's like, let's move back to Fremantle, with some other reasons that we needed to, but it's not long enough. This podcast is not long enough to get into those. So then we moved back here with the intention of being able to, for me to focus on my creative stuff, my children's books, illustrations, art shows, and the podcast, plus every other idea that sort of flows out of my brain.
Yeah. So where did you learn that? Like, have you always had that? I'm a little bit like you, probably not as probably exposed as you with the books and all that, but like, how do you, it's, you know, do you have this confidence, or do you have this fearless sense of being to get things out there? Like, how have you been able to process all that for yourself?
To process all the creativity?
Yeah, because I guess some people would be creative and wouldn't take a risk and, you know, put things out there. Well, other people like yourself, you've got your podcast, it's different, you've got the books. I feel
sorry to cut you off there, but I feel like there's a couple of things. So I'm probably a bit more of a narcissist than most people, where I want that sort of, like, if I make something, I kind of want people to see it.
Right. So do you think do you not see that as confidence, or do you feel that it's this full-on intense desire for you to, or do you believe fully that your stuff is that good that you want it out there?
Oh, no, I don't believe it's that good. But I think also, if most people who are creative, when you make something, if you want to move forward, you usually end up not liking what you just created, so then you can move on to the next piece.
Right.
But then there's some pieces I look back and I'm like, oh, dang, that's much better than I thought it was. Or I look back and I'm like, that's that. There is definitely a part of being confident about it, but there is also confidence, the desire to have it out there is almost stronger than the desire to hide it a little bit, if you get what I mean.
It's like a passion, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you got this passion, and I would be very, very sad if you didn't actually release those pictures that you released, because, you know, they bring joy to people. And so have you always been creative? Has it been something you've had since childhood?
I can't remember not ever having a pencil in my hand. Like, there's been times when I haven't drawn a little bit. But even when I was younger, like one of my nanas would say, driving to her house, where she lived in the bush a little bit, and she'd be like, I'd be picturing lions and tigers in the bush at like the age of like 7, sort of
Wow.
playing around with the imagination in that way. I think I was lucky enough to have people around um, that would foster letting
Yeah.
me use my imagination. So my mum would always have paper, even though we were like pretty poor and on the government pension, she'd have old computer paper that used to have the blue and white lines on it,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
terrible to draw on, but it's like you just draw on whatever you can. And so I would draw on that stuff and just like, because I could get it in big stacks really cheap. And
Yeah. I mean, like, I think that what you're describing is like a lost, it's becoming a lost sort of trait or a lost, you know what I mean? Like that, I remember those days of drawing on those papers as well. Like,
yeah,
so, you know, I don't know many people like you that are choosing to go down that path of, you know, maybe not being materialistic as much or not being as focused on other things that everyone else wants you to be. So is that something that you're fostering with your own children? Is that something that you hope for the future generations, that we still harness a creativity? When I was speaking to Holden, he
yeah.
was talking to us about how the coronavirus has sort of shut down certain productions and things are slowing down. And we were talking about how after all this finishes, how the arts will continue. So how do you see your, what's your role in harnessing creativity with your family and people around you?
So one, I think creativity is such a broad brushstroke, and I think there's a lot of people that think they aren't creative.
Mm,
Just because I use my creativity for a pencil and pad or digitally or whatever, doesn't mean that someone who is a plumber is not being creative when they're solving a problem.
right. Okay.
So the
So you
I
see
think
it in,
there's
you see creativity in everything.
yeah, it's almost like creativity is in the problem solving. And a
Right.
lot of times if I'm drawing, sometimes I even look at it of like, I've got a problem I need to solve. And I'll be like, oh, where are you? I can't find you. Oh, I found it. Um, Fostering it in my children, I basically have, obviously there's more rules, but 3 rules. I want my kids to try, to have manners, and to, now I can't even think of the third one, to try to have manners and to eat healthy. And so the trying part is, that's what I want them to be able to sort of do. And like my daughter, just the other day, she's 5, but put together a whole book. Like she printed out pictures of fish, colored them in, and then made a book about fish.
Yeah,
Like,
that's cool.
yeah,
Do you feel the education system? I don't have children, so I don't really know.
yeah, yeah,
I know that I'm a primary school teacher, but I don't practice, so I don't really know much
yeah.
about school. Do you think that the creativity and the arts is, again, is it being harnessed, and are kids allowing themselves, because we are sort of going into a very serious sort of time, and there's social media and there's distractions and all
Yeah.
that. I mean, I look at my own nephews and nieces, and they don't draw. They don't do things like that. They sit with their phones or tablets. I know that
Uh,
it's probably a family
how old
problem.
are they?
Well, they vary. You know, they vary in
Yeah.
ages, but you know, it's more common than, I guess, seeing someone doing those things. So, do you feel that we are moving away, and the school system is actually encouraging, or do we need to be more proactive and start pushing people to be more creative? Because when I listen to you, I get excited because you're giving people permission. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people don't think that they can, or they don't have time to.
Yes. I get the question I get asked the most is how can I get I can never draw. How can I do it? Or
Mm,
first thing is, or they say, what tools can I do to make me a better drawer? And I'm like, whatever tools are in front of you is
mm,
what you do. Just like with that old computer paper, just draw. Like
mm.
I don't, every lunch, my kids, I do a cut little sketch illustration for them. And then I trade them over. So I don't have to draw two a day, but I do like a sketch for them for their lunch boxes. So they find it in there and
Aw.
they open it and they'll be like all different ones. Some of those random, some are
You
tailored to
you are
them.
such a unique spirit. I love
Oh, thank you
that.
so much. I actually think I got that idea from the guy in America that would draw on his kids' sandwich bags and make the sandwiches either look like funny or moldy. And something I said, oh, I could sort of again, back at like when I was working at Nintendo, I'm drawing all these like in meetings or waiting for my computer to load. I'd be like, oh, sketch this out. And then I was like, started when my kid went to school, I was like, oh, I've got 100 or so drawings here. Let's pop them in there.
Mm.
And I have them available on my website for people to download and put in their lunchboxes if they wanted to. But back to the question of whether school is fostering it and stuff like that. I think that it depends on what school you're going to. Because I spoke to a woman yesterday, and we're talking about how she got into jewelry making, and it was like she literally got into it because her school offered that course.
Right. Okay.
And so I think it depends on what school. Where we are, we're in a very a supportive art community here in Fremantle. So I might have a little bit of a blinders on of what might be happening outside here, but it seems pretty supportive.
Well, I think that the thing that I've noticed is, for myself anyway, I can't talk for anyone else, but like being in lockdown in Melbourne, and I've been in lockdown since March, right? So I'm actually really thankful because the lockdowns actually encouraged me to become creative, and I honestly don't think I would have been creative if I had to be like traveling to work for 2 hours and just being in that normal grind. So it's actually given me an opportunity to sort of expand and do that.
Definitely.
So you may not know the answer to this, but do you think, or how do you think art or creativity helps with mental health?
So I think this question is different for every person. Obviously, there's some people that will paint out or draw out or film, photography, their feelings, right? If we're talking about creativity or the art in the general sense. For me personally, there is like, if I can get into the flow of drawing, that is like, it feels, and I've spoken to a few people that do this, it's like, it feels like meditative. Like you're not thinking about anything. It's just you and whatever the next line is or brush stroke or whatever. Then you come out the other side of that and you've got this bit of artwork. Now, what do you do with that artwork? For me, I want to show people, whether it's on Instagram, whether I'm showing my wife or my kids, like I sort of want that satisfaction. Now, on top of that, now I'm trying to make a living doing that sort of stuff. And so I'm illustrating children's books, or I'm putting out prints.
Is that a different feeling? Like, because money's involved?
It definitely puts a different pressure on it, or a different desire as a goal, I would say. And especially when you're doing something like, I don't think a lot of people realize how much time goes into like picture books. And so you're basically doing a piece of art for every page, and you've got to try and make each of them stand out and make them look beautiful, make them flow. It's an amazing process, but there's a lot of it to sort of get through. So you go through these like waves of emotion to get to there. But the monetary reward for those is not that great unless you get that a picture book that flies off the shelf and you're like, yeah, sweet, okay, that's going to be kept being in reprint. But mind you,
well, I was going to say, what would happen to, what do you think would happen to you if you were not able to draw? Say if you had
I think
for some reason you had to like not draw for a week.
Well, that stuff's happened. But yes, I definitely get the urge and the crave for it. I have, before I would get headaches, like, because I think it's because my brain's trying to get so much like out with it. And I think I'd probably get irritable, or I'd want to be like I get like, especially my family, I might be like, I need my space to like, I need to do this. I'm in a lucky enough position that if I took a week off now, well, not right now, I'm crazy busy, but in my normal time, if I took a week off, there's no hard deadlines except for the podcast, which is self-imposed. But if I could tailor it, if I could organize that out where I could be, I'm going to be away for this week, then I'd be all right.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to figure out if when people take time off, if you love something, I'm guessing you're still going to be drawing it somewhere, aren't you?
Oh, I take everywhere I go.
Exactly.
I just went down to, do they have maybe there those RAC like resorts?
Well, we have RACV, so yeah, we do.
Oh yeah, okay. I'd never heard about them before, and so we went down to one of those, and I still took a sketch pad with two different types of paper, a little thing that had three different types of pens in there in case I didn't know what I was going to feel like drawing. And I ended up sketching out this drawing of my wife and daughter, sort of just looking out over this big lake, or this little lake, you would say. And it was one of the most easy drawings to sort of flow out. But if I didn't take that, I would never have got to have that.
Yeah.
So usually, if I'm sitting down, unless I'm totally drained of energy, I've usually got either my iPad when I'm drawing with Procreate. I'm either got a pen and pad drawing. I've got my computer sorting out a drawing. Like I'm usually just trying to be.
It's like you mentioned meditation, but it's like mindfulness. You're focusing on something.
Oh yeah.
So your mind is just freeing itself from any worries or concerns.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what you said earlier because you might be able to help me. When you said, when I create something and I get really passionate about something, I sometimes grieve the end. Do you know what I mean? Like, so you're talking about the painting, finishing, and then you want to show people.
Yeah.
For me, I was listening to that going, okay, how do I do that when it's not something you can show people? Like it's a creative thing that is just like, it could be, something that's not a painting or not something visual. So how do you, what advice would you give in regards to processing that? Because I do get sad at the end because I get so into it and then all of a sudden it's over. I sort of secretly look for things to be wrong so I can continue doing it.
I think once it's done, I have a term called it's just got to ship it, right? So there's any drawings that I sort of do, I probably could go back and edit it over and over and over again. Oh, I could change this, I could add that. There has to be a point where I have to draw a line, it's ship it time. I can't go back to it because
and you just let it go.
Yeah, I think I have to, because I have to move on to whatever's next.
Right.
And it's whether it's a self-imposed or an actual deadline. But a lot of time I'm like, that has to be done because either that spurred on a million other ideas, or there's already ideas coming in, or I've got a project I've been sitting on for a while, and that was going to be the one after this. So I think that's how I move on from it. You sound
really like I need to learn from you, because if I had an idea in my head, I can't just spark it. I end up doing 5 things at once. So
I still have 5 things. Well, just this week. So I interviewed someone this week. I've got the social media to do for another interview. I've got to edit that, like you'll have to do on here. I got a book launch happening next week, so I'm doing all these pins and stuff for that. I'm illustrating a book as well right now. Plus, I'm running out of those lunchbox drawings that I was saying that I'm doing, so I've got to try and fit those in sometime this week. And then it's like, there's stuff I want to build out in my garage. I want to make sure I skate with my kids and stuff, and hang out my wife.
How do you find that you're okay with managing all that? Like, what's your little process of managing time? Because it sounds like you're pretty busy and you've got lots on. You just let things happen, or do you process a different way?
If I'm being good, I usually write a list every day, and that helps me check things off. If I'm too busy on days like this, I just know that I pick like 3 things to do. And lately I've been dropping balls left, right, and center. But I think you've got to be okay with what balls you drop. And so I think a couple of weeks ago I was meant to have a meeting with a local burger place that I'm friends with, and I've got a T-shirt design that we're going to work out together. And other until right this moment, I just realized that I'd forgotten about it. They're pretty relaxed. I don't think they're going to sweat it too bad. But I was meant to have a dinner last night, and I was like, I got home from my kids from taking to their swim lessons, and I said to my wife, I'm going to jump in and start working again. And she was like, okay. And then I came out for dinner, and I was like, oh, I forgot that I was going out for dinner. Luckily, it's a mate that's the priority of level of what it's like. And then once this is done, the project's done, then I'll probably be like, okay, guys, now I can go out, reach out, and I'll hold my head down, take a little humble, like one on the chin of like, my bad, but I needed to get that stuff done. What can I do moving forward to sort of help out? And with those people, I've got the relationships where that can sort of happen.
That's good, because you're not allowing guilt or anything that comes from them to, you can communicate and actually get things done, and they understand the importance of your life and what you do.
Yeah, there's still guilt, and you're still like, there's still that little thing in the back of your brain going like, oh, you still drop that ball. You want to be that person that is able to juggle 17 balls at once. But no, I think you got to be sort of a little bit okay. Be like, yep, okay, that one's sort of gone as well.
Yeah. Just one last question before we let you go. So what advice, you've sort of given a little bit of advice on the podcast, but what advice would you give to our listeners that may feel that they've got a talent, or they maybe have an interest? Because there are so many people that say that they would like to try something, but they don't, or they want to do something, but they don't. What advice would you give them to sort of get the ball rolling?
I would say, if we're talking basically with anything.
Anything creative, I guess.
Okay. I would say just give it a go. Like, I know that sounds silly, but no one's good when they start. Like, I have tried so many things. Doing my podcast, I can feel how much I've grown just in the 10 episodes. And that's what moves me forward, because I'm like, oh, okay, I'll get a little bit better. Everybody had to learn to walk. Everyone had to learn how to use a phone. They had to learn to write. And even now, people are willing to learn skills, but usually it's a skill like for work, or they have to learn a skill because their kid needs to learn how to do something. Oh, my kid plays soccer, and their dad might be like, I'm not really sporty, but I've learned how to kick it, or something like that. Or their mum might be that way as well. I had a single mum, so my mum had to learn a whole bunch of different sports just to practice out the back with me. And I think if you take that little mindset, like, oh, I've learned all these other things, and you go, if I want to do something creative, I can just start small. Oh, how do I start drawing more? Just keep a pen and a pad with you, and then just doodle when you think you can.
Yeah.
Or if you want to paint, go do one of those wine and paints, and with a couple of friends, and that might be.
I saw there was an SBS thing. Did you see that? The guy that did SBS is a program now where he teaches you how to paint, and you just copy his painting.
Oh, is that Bob Ross?
Yeah, it's like it's very old. It's like
So that I'm pretty sure that's Bob Ross from in the States, and he's got like the most viewed television ever, because people would go to sleep listening to him when they'd come back from like partying and stuff like that. But he's got he's like, oh, let's paint a very happy tree right here.
Yeah, exactly him. That's exactly him. And
it's got like big hair and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
It's very 70s.
Yeah,
and I guess in this day and age as well, we've got distractions like Netflix and all that. So I've been trying to encourage my group of friends to sort of stay away from those things that are sort of they're static. They're not allowing us to move and do that, and just to try different things. So I think, do you think that's a good idea, challenging yourself? Like I personally try to challenge myself at least once a month to do something totally different. If I fail, I fail, and I fail a lot.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So do you think that's a good way to look at it? Because we could easily go down the track of not doing anything because we've got a lot of things done for us on the phones and on TV. And do you know what I mean?
Oh no, I fully get that, and I get wrapped in those traps as well. Like, I've gone down YouTube holes for hours, or like Instagram holes and whatever. I still watch a bunch of Netflix. One of the things that I've had to really work on is when I was drawing, I used to put like a movie or a TV show and put it on my computer, like my laptop, while I'm drawing on my other one, and I'd have it right here. But I'd be like drawing, and then I'd be like watching for a little bit, and I'd be like, oh, hang on. And I noticed that was taking a long time. So then I was like, okay, I'm only going to do audiobooks. And I need to do an audiobook of a movie that I've seen. And
you can picture it.
So basically my brain is distracted with that little piece, and I can just zoom in and focus. I don't need to use my imagination to picture this world that's being created and stuff like that. And so for this book, I went through the Harry Potter series on audiobook.
Oh, wow.
And then now, because they're way more expensive than I thought they were going to be, so I was like, oh, I'm going to go back through those. So I'm in to the second book now, but it's literally just so my brain can go, use that part to be distracted. Here we're focusing on the drawing. Because then if I got a movie or something like that, I get sucked into it a little bit because of the visual stimulation. But a lot of the time, if I'm sitting on the couch with my wife, I'm drawing then. So I think people think they need to set a certain time. They've got to have all their stuff laid out perfectly. If you feel like drawing and you're like, but I still want to hang out with my missus or mister, or Even my kids, like, you can sit down and draw at the same time they're drawing or doing homework at the same time. And I know people are really busy as well with that stuff. Like, how do you try and, if you did 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes you didn't do another day. So if you're like, oh yeah, I just sketch in 5 minutes. Okay. You just build up that 5 minutes of skill to the 10,000 hours, if you want to say.
I also think that there needs to be a tiny little bit of commitment or want. You know what I mean? Like, once you connect with something that you want to try, it's not hard to actually do what you want to do because you want to do it. And that's the thing that I've noticed, that a lot of, like in lockdown, a lot of people in Melbourne have either done that, they've challenged themselves, or they've just done nothing. So it's interesting how people can sometimes see things. You know?
Think the hard part is getting to that little notch over the hill that makes you have that passion. Yeah. And I think having the little like easy steps to get there sort of goes, being on lockdown and that's a little bit different when you do have so much time on your hands, and then your mind sort of plays tricks on you, like, I should be doing more or less, or like, just to relax and enjoy this time. We don't get that often in our life. And then at the same time, you're like, well, I should come out of this with a new skill, which, with the passion side of things, though, if someone's really interested in it and they already had that, they would have already tried to find time, I think.
Yeah. True. I mean, like lockdown has given us an opportunity, though, to try things, because the world before that was really getting really busy, and doing something that you really want to try can sometimes take a long time to organize. But well, Matty, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. I could talk to you for a long time, and I am really curious to talk to you after this to see what you would have drawn of me.
Well, but I think that I actually think we should organize it where you come on my podcast and we do a long form one, and then I can do an illustration of yours.
I would love that. Oh my God, I would love that so much. So thank you, and I'm going to put all your information attached to this podcast so people can find you. And do you have like a website about your books and so on?
It's mattymitchellbooks.com.
Cool. I'll get it off you and we'll put it all in.
Cool.
Thanks, mate. Have a great day today.
Yeah, we'll do. You too.
So you've been listening to the Secret Men's Business podcast. This is Joey. Now be mindful that the podcasts are out Monday and Thursday. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you get notified. So see you next time, guys. Bye.